The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of the Indomitable. Captain Hyun stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the view screen as 6 alien ships appeared from nowhere. They were large, sleek vessels that seemed to shimmer in the darkness of space. Their hulls were perfect, without a single mark or imperfection. They looked like they had been grown rather than built. "They just appeared out of nowhere, sir," said Lieutenant Mira from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across her console, pulling up data on the unknown ships. No jump signature, no warp trail. 1 second empty space, the next second they were just there. Hyun nodded slowly. He had heard rumors about the Valkyrie Collective. They were supposed to be the smartest species in this part of the galaxy. Some said they had technology that seemed like magic. Looking at their ships now, Hyun could believe it. "Any weapons locked on us?" he asked. "No, sir. They're just sitting there, watching us." The communication system beeped. Someone wanted to talk. Hyun looked at his communications officer and nodded. "Put them through." The view screen changed. Now it showed the interior of one of the alien ships. The creature that appeared was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to glow softly. It had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. When it spoke, the words were translated by the ship's computer into something Hyun could understand. "Human vessel. I am High Researcher Quinthar of the Valkyrie Collective. You have entered our territory without permission." Hyun stepped forward. "This is Captain Hyun of the Warship Indomitable. Our maps show this as unclaimed space." "Your maps are incorrect," Quinthar said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "We have controlled this region for 3,000 of your years. However, we understand that humanity is new to this area. We are willing to discuss the matter." Behind Quinthar, Hyun could see other Valkyrie moving around. They all seemed busy with various tasks, barely paying attention to the conversation. It was clear they did not see the Indomitable as a threat. "What kind of discussion did you have in mind?" Hyun asked. Quinthar's 4 eyes blinked one at a time like a wave moving across his face. "We have heard much about humanity. Your species has made quite an impression in the galaxy. Wars with the Krell, trade disputes with the Consortium, territorial expansion into 17 systems in less than 50 years. Very interesting. We do what we need to do to survive." "Yes, survival. That is what interests us most." Quinthar leaned forward slightly. "The Valkyrie Collective has survived for millions of years by understanding our potential enemies. We study them, we learn from them, and we predict their actions. This allows us to avoid unnecessary conflict." Mira glanced at Hyun with a raised eyebrow. The captain kept his face neutral. "We wish to study you," Quinthar continued. "More specifically, we wish to study your vessel and your methods of warfare. Allow us to conduct a full analysis of your ship, and in return, we will grant you safe passage through all Valkyrie space. We will also provide you with coordinates to 3 star systems rich in resources that you may claim as your own." Hyun was quiet for a moment. Engineer Tae-Yang spoke up from his station near the back of the bridge. "Captain, this could be a trap. Let them on our ship and they could sabotage us." "I am aware of that possibility," Hyun said softly. On the screen, Quinthar's expression did not change. "We have no interest in destroying you through deception. If we wished you destroyed, you would already be destroyed. We have weapons that could turn your ship into dust before your sensors detected the firing sequence. But destruction teaches us nothing. Analysis teaches us everything." It was a threat wrapped in academic language, but it was still a threat. Hyun understood perfectly. The Valkyrie could destroy the Indomitable whenever they wanted. The question was whether they would learn anything useful before they did. "How long would this analysis take?" Hyun asked. 1 week, perhaps 2. "We will scan your systems, observe your crew, and conduct several tests. We will not access your classified databases or compromise your core systems. Think of it as a very thorough inspection." Hyun turned away from the screen and looked at his crew. Mira looked skeptical. Tae-Yang looked worried. Dr. Nari, the ship's medical officer, stood near the back of the bridge with her arms crossed. She gave him a slight nod. At the weapons station, Sergeant Doyen just shrugged. He was a Marine, not a diplomat. He would follow orders either way. The captain turned back to the screen. "I need to discuss this with my crew." "Give me 1 hour." "Of course," Quinthar said. "We are patient. We have waited millions of years. 1 hour is nothing." The screen went dark. Hyun called his senior officers together in the conference room. The discussion was heated. Half of them thought it was too dangerous. The other half thought it might be their only chance to get through Valkyrie space without a fight. "They want to dissect us like lab rats," Mira said. "They want to find our weaknesses so they can use them later." Maybe, Hyun agreed. Or maybe they are exactly what they say they are. Scientists who want to understand us. And when they understand us? Taeyang asked. What then? Hyun smiled slowly. It was not a warm smile. Then they will know what they are dealing with. And that might be exactly what we want. Dr. Nari understood first. You want to send them a message. The Velkari think everything can be understood through analysis. They think if they collect enough data, they can predict anything. But humans do not work that way. We are not predictable. We are not logical. We are chaos wrapped up in skin and bone. So you want to show them that, Mira said. And now she was smiling too. I want to show them exactly what humanity is capable of. And I want them to realize that no amount of analysis will prepare them for us. If we refuse their offer, they learn nothing. They might attack us out of caution. But if we let them study us, really study us, they will see something that terrifies them more than any weapon. What's that? Doyen asked. They will see that we cannot be understood. They will see that we cannot be predicted. And they will realize that fighting humanity is not a problem that can be solved with mathematics and logic. The room was quiet. Finally, Taeyang laughed. That is either the smartest thing I have ever heard or the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Probably both, Hyun admitted. But I am the captain and this is my decision. We let them study us. We show them everything they want to see. And we make sure they understand that they are not studying lab rats. They are studying predators. 1 hour later, Hyun stood on the bridge again. The communication system beeped. He answered it himself this time. Hi, Researcher Quinthar, we accept your offer. You may conduct your analysis. But we have conditions. You may observe and scan, but you will not tamper with our core systems. You will not access classified data, and your people will be accompanied by our security at all times. Quinthar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence again. Acceptable. We will begin immediately. Prepare to receive our research team. The screen went dark. Mira looked at her captain. I hope you know what you are doing, sir. So do I, Hyun said quietly. So do I. Within an hour, a Velkari shuttle approached the Indomitable. It docked smoothly and 6 Velkari researchers came aboard. They carried strange instruments that hummed and glowed. They moved through the ship with confidence as if they owned it. Quinthar himself led the team. He looked around the human ship with those 4 strange eyes, taking in every detail. His expression was hard to read, but Hyun thought he saw something like disappointment. The Velkari had come expecting to find something impressive. Instead, they saw a warship that looked rough and practical. The walls were metal. The corridors were plain. Everything was functional, nothing was beautiful. Interesting, Quinthar said, and his tone suggested he meant the opposite. Hyun smiled to himself. The Velkari wanted to analyze humanity. They were about to get their wish. And before this was over, they were going to regret it. The Velkari team spread out through the Indomitable like insects exploring a new nest. They moved with purpose, their instruments scanning everything. Quinthar stood in the main corridor watching his team work. One of his researchers, a younger Velkari named Neelix, approached him with a datapad. Initial scans are complete, High Researcher, Neelix said. The results are disappointing. Show me. Neelix brought up the data. The hull is a simple composite, mostly titanium and steel with ceramic plating. Very basic. Our ships use crystalline matrices that are 17 times stronger. Their armor would barely stop our weakest weapons. Quinthar nodded. Continue. The power system is fusion-based, clean but inefficient. They are getting maybe 40% of the theoretical energy output. Our antimatter cores produce 6 times more power in half the space. Weapons, primitive. Kinetic railguns that fire solid metal projectiles. Missile batteries with chemical explosives. Some basic laser cannons. Nothing we have not seen before. Nothing that would threaten a Velkari cruiser. Quinthar looked down the corridor where Captain Hyun was standing with his arms crossed, watching them. The human captain looked amused. That bothered Quinthar. Why would he look amused when his ship was being proven inferior? What about their computer systems? Quinthar asked. Adequate but not impressive. They use quantum processors, but only 3rd-generation ones. Their AI is limited, probably intentionally. They seem to rely heavily on manual control instead of automation. That explains the inefficiency, Quinthar said. They have not learned to trust their machines. Commander Threxus, the military escort assigned to protect the research team, approached. He was broader than the other Velkari, with darker gray skin and scars across his face. Unlike the researchers, Threxus had actually fought in wars. Something feels wrong, Threxus said quietly. Explain, Quinther ordered. The humans are too calm, too confident. Either they are very good at hiding fear, or they know something we do not. They are simply trying to maintain dignity, Quinther said. Their ship is clearly inferior. What else can they do but pretend it does not matter? Threxus was not convinced, but he said nothing more. He had learned long ago that researchers did not like their conclusions questioned. The Velkari moved to the next phase of their analysis. They wanted to test the ship's defensive systems. Quinther approached Captain Hyun with the request. We wish to conduct mock attacks on your vessel, Quinther said. We will use low-power versions of our weapons. This will allow us to measure your defensive capabilities. Hyun thought about it for a moment, then nodded. Acceptable. But I want my crew at their stations. We will respond as if it were a real attack. Of course. We would expect nothing less. It will make the data more accurate. The Velkari returned to their ships. Hyun ordered his crew to battle stations. Throughout the Indomitable, people moved quickly to their positions. Mira took her place at the weapons console. Taeyang was in engineering, his hands already moving across multiple screens. Doyen positioned his marines at key points throughout the ship. All stations report ready, sir, Mira said. Then let them begin, Hyun replied. The first Velkari attack came without warning. A beam of purple energy hit the Indomitable's shields. The ship shook slightly. On the bridge, displays showed the shield strength dropping by 8%. Return fire, Hyun ordered. Mira pressed several buttons. The railguns fired, sending metal slugs toward the Velkari ship. The enemy shields absorbed them easily. It was all part of the test. The attacks continued for an hour. The Velkari fired from different angles, testing different shield sections. They used various types of weapons. Energy beams, particle cannons, even some kind of gravity weapon that made the ship groan. Through it all, the Indomitable defended itself. The shields held. The point defense systems shot down incoming missiles. The ship maneuvered to avoid the heaviest fire. Back on the lead Velkari ship, Quinther watched the data pour in. Everything was as expected. The human shields performed adequately. The armor held up well enough. The weapons were unimpressive but functional. It was all very ordinary, but Nalix noticed something strange. He pulled up a detailed analysis of the human ship's response patterns and frowned. High researcher, look at this. Quinther examined the data. What am I looking at? The response times. They are inconsistent. Sometimes the humans react to our attacks in 0.2 seconds. Other times it takes almost a full second. And the power distribution keeps changing in ways that do not match any algorithm I know. Their computer systems are inferior. We already knew this. Yes, but it is more than that. Look at this section. Neelix highlighted part of the data. Here, they redirected power to the forward shields before we fired at that section. They could not have known we were going to target that area. We randomized our attack pattern. Quinther stared at the data. Neelix was right. The humans had strengthened their forward shields 3 seconds before the Velkari attack hit that exact location. It made no sense. Perhaps their sensors detected our weapons charging. Our weapons do not have a charging signature. That is why we use them. Quinther was quiet for a moment. Then he made a decision. It is an anomaly. Interesting, but not significant. We have enough data from this test. Move to the next phase. The Velkari stopped their attacks. Quinther contacted Captain Hyun again. The test is complete. Your ship performed adequately. Now we wish to observe your crew during their normal duties. We want to understand how humans make decisions during combat situations. You want to watch us during drills? Hyun asked. Precisely. Very well. We were planning combat exercises tomorrow anyway. You can observe. The next day, the Velkari researchers positioned themselves throughout the ship. They carried recording devices and instruments. Quinther himself stood on the bridge, staying out of the way but watching everything. Begin the drill, Hyun ordered. The simulation started. According to the scenario, the Indomitable was under attack by 3 enemy cruisers. They were outnumbered and outgunned. It was a difficult situation, designed to test the crew's ability to think under pressure. Mira immediately started calling out targets. Enemy Cruiser 1 is charging weapons. Enemy Cruiser 2 is moving to flank us. Enemy Cruiser 3 is launching fighters. Taeyang, give me more power to engines, Hyun ordered. In engineering, Taeyang looked at his screens and made a decision. He did not just increase power to the engines. He redirected power from the aft shields, then rerouted backup power from life support in the cargo bay. It created a complicated power flow that was definitely not in the manual, but it gave the ship a burst of speed that let it dodge the incoming fire. On the bridge, Quinther watched in confusion. Why would the engineer create such a complicated power distribution? There were simpler, more efficient ways to increase engine power. The Valkyrie AI could have calculated the optimal solution in milliseconds. Mira fired the railguns at enemy Cruiser 2, even though enemy Cruiser 1 was the bigger threat. Quinther checked his probability matrices. Attacking Cruiser 2 made no logical sense. Cruiser 1 should be the priority target. But then Cruiser 2 exploded and its debris field spread out into space. When Cruiser 1 tried to move into flanking position, it had to slow down to avoid the debris. That gave the Indomitable time to rotate and bring more weapons to bear. Mira had not targeted the bigger threat. She had targeted the ship whose destruction would create the most problems for the others. It was not optimal by any standard algorithm, but it worked perfectly. The drill continued. Hyun made decisions that contradicted standard tactical doctrine. Taeyang performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. Mira fired weapons at targets that seemed random until the bigger picture became clear, and through it all they talked to each other. Not with formal military precision, but with casual conversation. Taeyang, can you give me 5 more seconds on the engines? Mira asked. I can give you 4, maybe 4.5 if you are lucky. I will take 4. Coming up, it was not efficient. It was not optimal. It was not anything the Valkyrie understood. They watched in growing frustration as the human crew successfully defeated the simulated enemy through methods that made no mathematical sense. When the drill ended, Quinther stood in silence. Nelix approached him carefully. High researcher, the humans do not follow standard combat protocols. They improvise constantly. They take risks that no logical analysis would recommend, and yet they succeed. There must be a pattern, Quinther insisted. Run the data through every analytical model we have. There has to be an explanation. But even as he said it, Quinther felt doubt creeping in. He had analyzed thousands of species over his long career. He had never seen anything like this. Dr. Nari, who had been watching Quinther watch the crew, walked over to him. She had a slight smile on her face. You look confused, she said. Your crew does not follow logical patterns, Quinther replied. No, we do not. Why not? Logic is superior to chaos. Algorithms are superior to instinct. Nari laughed softly. You are trying to analyze instinct. That is your problem. You cannot measure it. You cannot replicate it. You cannot predict it. It just is. Everything can be analyzed. Can it? Nari gestured at the bridge crew. These people have trained together for years. They know each other. They trust each other. When 5 days had passed since the Valkyrie came aboard the Indomitable, Quinther had filled dozens of data storage devices with information about the human ship and its crew. He had measurements, scans, recordings, and analysis reports. He had more data than he had collected on any other species, and he understood nothing. He sat alone in the quarters Captain Hyun had provided, staring at screens full of numbers and graphs. Every mathematical model he applied to the human behavior patterns came back with the same result: inconsistent. Every prediction algorithm failed. Every probability matrix showed errors. The humans did not make sense. They should not be as effective as they were. Their technology was inferior. Their tactics were inefficient. Their decision-making process was chaotic. Yet somehow they succeeded. There was a knock at the door. Quinther turned off his screens before answering. Enter. Commander Threxus stepped inside. The military officer looked troubled. High researcher, I need to speak with you about the humans. What about them? I think we should leave now, before we learn anything more. Quinthar's 4 eyes focused on Threxus with surprise. Explain yourself. I have been watching them for 5 days. I have seen how they fight, how they think, how they respond to threats, and I have realized something that your data cannot show you. Threxus paused. They are dangerous precisely because they cannot be understood. That is not logical. No, it is not. But neither are the humans. That is the point. Threxus sat down without being invited. It was a breach of protocol, but he did not seem to care. In all my years of military service, I have fought 12 different species. Every one of them could be understood. The Kresh were aggressive but predictable. The Torvians were defensive but logical. The Himari were cowardly but consistent. But the humans, they are none of these things and all of these things at the same time. Quinthar wanted to argue, but he could not. Everything Threxus said matched what his own data showed. I need more time, Quinthar said. More tests. There must be a pattern. You will not find one. I am telling you this as someone who understands warfare. The humans are not chaotic by accident. They are chaotic by design. They have turned unpredictability into a weapon. Before Quinthar could respond, the ship's alarm system began blaring. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Over the intercom, Captain Hyun's voice rang out clearly. All crew to battle stations. This is not a drill. Unknown hostile vessels approaching. Marines, prepare for possible boarding action. Quinthar and Threxus looked at each other, then rushed to the bridge. When they arrived, they found the human crew already at their positions. Captain Hyun stood in the center, looking calm despite the alarm. Captain, what is happening? Quinthar asked. We received a distress call from a mining colony 3 light minutes from here. They are under attack by raiders. 12 ships, mostly light frigates and fighters. Hyun gestured at the view screen, which showed the tactical situation. We are the only vessel close enough to help. You intend to fight? Threxus asked. You are 1 ship against 12. Yes, that is suicide. Hyun smiled slightly. That is what the raiders will think too. Quinthar, you wanted to observe humans in real combat. You are about to get your wish. You and your people can stay on the bridge or return to your quarters. Your choice. Quinthar hesitated only a moment. We will stay. For observation purposes. Good, then stay out of the way. Hyun turned to Mira. Time to target? 8 minutes at current speed, sir. Taeyang, give me everything the engines can handle. I want to get there in 6. Yes, sir. The Indomitable surged forward. In engineering, Taeyang pushed the fusion reactors harder than Quinthar thought possible. The ship should have been shaking itself apart, but somehow it held together. Nalix, who had also come to the bridge, pulled out his scanning device and checked the readings. Hi, researcher. The humans are operating their engines at 137% of rated capacity. This should cause catastrophic failure. Should cause, Threxus noted, but it has not. On the view screen, the mining colony came into view. It was a small installation on an asteroid, home to perhaps 500 people. A dozen raider ships surrounded it, firing at the colony's weak shields. Several buildings were already damaged. It would not be long before the shields failed completely. They are pirates, Mira reported, not military. They are after the refined metals the colony produces. Tactical analysis, Hyun ordered. Mira's fingers danced across her console. 12 enemy ships, 10 light frigates, 2 fighter carriers. Each carrier has launched approximately 20 fighters. Total enemy count, 12 capital ships, 40 fighters. Total enemy firepower, approximately 4 times our own. Quinthar ran the numbers in his head. The probability of human victory was less than 30%. The logical choice was to withdraw and call for reinforcements. Attack pattern Omega-3, Hyun said calmly. Sir? Mira looked surprised. That pattern is designed for ships twice our size. I know. Do it anyway. The Indomitable charged straight toward the raider fleet. It did not slow down. It did not try to avoid detection. It simply accelerated directly at the enemy like a missile. The raiders noticed them and turned to meet the threat. Quinthar watched on his display as the enemy ships adjusted their formation, preparing to focus fire on the human warship. It was a standard defensive tactic. It would allow them to overwhelm the Indomitable's shields quickly. Mira, target the 2 ships at coordinates 724 and 816, Hyun ordered. Quinthar checked those coordinates. Those ships were not the biggest threats. They were not the closest threats. They were just 2 frigates in the middle of the formation. It made no tactical sense. Mira fired without questioning the order. The railguns roared, sending solid metal slugs across space at tremendous speed. Both shots hit perfectly. The first frigate's engines exploded. The second ship lost its forward section, but those ships were not the point. When they died, they created debris. That debris scattered in a specific pattern right in front of the 2 fighter carriers. The carriers had to slow down to avoid the wreckage. That meant their fighters lost their support for a critical 10 seconds. In those 10 seconds, Doyen's Marines launched. 20 combat pods shot out from the Indomitable, each carrying 4 fully armed Marines. They did not go after the fighters. They went straight for one of the carriers. Are they insane? Nelix whispered. They are launching a boarding action while under fire from 40 fighters and 10 frigates? Yes, Threxy said quietly. He sounded impressed despite himself. The Indomitable twisted in space, presenting its heavily armored side to the enemy fire. Taeyang had redirected almost all shield power to that one side. It was inefficient. It left the other sides vulnerable, but it meant the side facing the enemy was nearly impenetrable. The raider ships fired everything they had. Energy weapons splashed against the shields. Missiles exploded on impact. Kinetic weapons punched dents in the armor. The Indomitable kept moving forward, taking damage but not stopping. Mira fired again and again. Her targets seemed random to Quinthar. She hit ships that were barely threats while ignoring ships that were firing at them. But each ship she destroyed created more problems for the raiders. Explosions blocked firing lanes. Debris fields forced ships to maneuver. The neat raider formation fell apart. Meanwhile, Doyen's Marines had reached the carrier. They cut through the hull and poured inside. Quinthar could hear the combat over the communication system. Gunfire, explosions, shouting. It was chaos. But it was controlled chaos. The Marines moved through the carrier like they had practiced it 1,000 times. They knew exactly where to go, exactly what to destroy. Within 3 minutes, the carrier went dark. Its engines stopped. Its weapons fell silent. One carrier down, Doyen reported, moving to engineering to plant charges. The second carrier tried to run. Hyun ordered Mira to let it go. Instead, she focused on the frigates. One by one, they exploded or went dead in space. The fighters, without their carriers, tried to swarm the Indomitable. The point defense system shot them down like insects. Quinthar watched in stunned silence. The battle had lasted less than 12 minutes. The humans had been outnumbered 4-1. They should have lost. Instead, 4 raider ships were destroyed. 2 more were crippled and drifting. The carrier Doyen had boarded suddenly exploded as the Marines' charges detonated. The remaining raiders broke formation and fled into deep space. The Indomitable had won. Damage report, Hyun said calmly, as if he had just finished a training exercise. Shield generators at 42%. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 9 already sealed. 1 railgun offline. No casualties. Good. Mira, contact the mining colony. Let them know they are safe. Doyen, good work. Get your people back aboard. Yes, sir. Hyun turned to Quinthar. The Velkari researcher was staring at him with all 4 eyes wide. Still want more data? Hyun asked. Quinthar could not speak. He had just watched everything he understood about warfare get thrown out the airlock. The humans had not followed a single standard tactical protocol. They had taken insane risks. They had made decisions that no computer would ever recommend, and they had won decisively. Threxis stepped forward. He looked at Captain Hyun with something like respect. How did you know the boarding action would work? You launched your Marines while under fire from 40. The Velkari research team gathered in the conference room that Captain Hyun had provided for them. Quinthar sat at the head of the table, his 4 eyes moving between the data screens and his fellow researchers. They had been analyzing the battle for 6 hours and nothing made sense. Show me the decision tree again, Quinthar ordered. Nelix brought up a holographic display. It showed the battle broken down into individual moments with each human decision marked as a branching point. The tree should have been neat and organized, showing clear logical paths from one decision to the next. Instead, it looked like an explosion. Branches went in impossible directions. Decisions led to outcomes that should not have been possible. The whole thing was a mess. I have run this through 17 different analytical models, Neelix said quietly. None of them can explain what happened. The humans made 43 tactical decisions during the battle. By standard military doctrine, 38 of those decisions were wrong. Yet they won anyway. Another researcher, an older Velkari named Vex, spoke up. It is worse than that. I have been analyzing the individual crew members. Each one made decisions independently that contradicted standard procedure. The engineer pushed the engines beyond safe limits. The weapons officer ignored priority targets. The Marines launched an assault that had only a 19% chance of success. Yet all of these wrong decisions combined into victory. Threxis said. He had been standing by the wall, watching the researchers struggle with their data. Do you not see what this means? It means our models are incomplete, Quinthar insisted. We need more data. We have enough data. What we lack is understanding. Threxis walked to the holographic display and waved his hand through it, making the branches scatter and reform. The humans are not like us. We plan, we calculate, we predict. They react, they improvise, they adapt. When we see chaos, they see opportunity. Quinthar wanted to argue. He wanted to insist that everything could be understood through sufficient analysis, but the data was right in front of him. The humans had won a battle they should have lost. They had done it through methods that made no mathematical sense, and Quinthar had no explanation. There was a knock at the door. Dr. Nari entered without waiting for permission. She carried a tray with cups of something steaming. "I thought you might want some coffee," she said. "It is a human drink. Helps with thinking." The Velkari looked at the cups suspiciously. Nari smiled and set the tray down. "It is not poisoned. I drink it every day." To prove her point, she picked up one of the cups and took a sip. Neelix cautiously picked up a cup and tasted it. His expression was difficult to read. "It is bitter. And hot. Yes, that is coffee. You get used to it." Quinthar ignored the coffee. He focused on Nari instead. "Doctor, I need to understand something. Your species fights in ways that make no logical sense. How do you train for that? How do you teach chaos?" Nari sat down at the table, still holding her coffee cup. "We do not teach chaos. We teach people to think for themselves, to trust their instincts, to make decisions based on experience rather than programming. But that is inefficient. A computer can process tactical data faster than any biological brain. True. But a computer can only consider data it has been programmed to recognize. What happens when the situation does not match any data in its memory? The computer freezes or makes a bad choice. But a human can look at a completely new situation and say, "This is similar to that other thing I experienced. So I will try something like what worked before, but modified for the current circumstances." Bex leaned forward. "You are describing pattern matching. We have algorithms for that." "No, I am describing intuition. It is different. Your algorithms need exact parameters. Human intuition works with vague similarities and gut feelings. It is messy and imprecise, but it is also flexible in ways no algorithm can match." Quinthar stood up and began pacing. During the battle, Captain Hyun launched a boarding action while under heavy fire. The probability of success was extremely low, yet he gave the order without hesitation. Why? Because he trusted Sergeant Doyen and his Marines. Because he knew they had trained for exactly that kind of situation. Because he felt it was the right move. Nari shrugged. "Sometimes you cannot wait for perfect data. Sometimes you just have to make a choice and commit to it." "That is madness, is it? You saw the result. We won, this time. But statistically—" "Statistics do not matter in the moment," Nari interrupted. "When you are in battle, you do not have time to run probability calculations. You act. You trust your training and your crew and your instincts. And yes, sometimes you are wrong. Sometimes people die. But if you wait for perfect information before making a decision, you are already dead." The room was silent. Quinthar stopped pacing and looked at the human doctor. She was not a warrior. She was a healer, a scientist like himself. But she was explaining a philosophy of warfare that was completely alien to everything the Velkari believed. "You accept uncertainty," Threxus said slowly. "We try to eliminate it. You embrace chaos. We try to control it." "Exactly," Nari said. "You cannot control chaos. You can only ride it and hope you end up somewhere good." Quinthar sat down heavily. His mind was racing. Everything he had built his career on, every principle of analysis and prediction that the Velkari collective held sacred, was being challenged by a species that barely understood faster than light travel. "I need to speak with Captain Hyun," Quinthar said. Nari nodded. "He is on the bridge. I will take you there." They walked through the corridors of the Indomitable. Quinthar noticed things he had not paid attention to before. The walls had marks and scratches. There were handwritten notes stuck to some of the panels. In one corridor, someone had drawn a small picture of Earth. These details had seemed unimportant before. Now Quinthar wondered if they were the most important details of all. The Velkari ships were perfect, sterile, identical. Every surface was clean. Every system was optimized. But they were cold, empty. The Indomitable was messy and worn and imperfect. But it was alive. It had personality. It had history written into every scratch and dent. They reached the bridge. Captain Hyun was standing at his usual spot, looking at a star chart. He turned when they entered. "Hi, researcher. Doctor, what can I do for you?" "I want to understand," Quinthar said simply. "How did you know your boarding action would succeed?" Hyun considered the question. "I did not know. I never know. But I have served with Doyen for 8 years. I have seen him train his Marines. I have watched them run drills 1,000 times. I know their capabilities, More importantly, I know their spirit. They do not give up. They do not fail because the odds are bad. So when I needed someone to do the impossible, I knew who to call. You trusted them. More than any computer algorithm. More than any tactical prediction. I trusted them because they have earned that trust over years of service together. Quinthar was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him since the battle ended. What would you have done if the boarding action had failed? Hyun smiled slightly. Then we would have tried something else. Fired all missiles at once, maybe. Or rammed one of the carriers. Or had Taeyang overload the reactors and turn our ship into a bomb. We would have found another way. Those options all involve high risk. Yes, but the mining colony had 500 people who would have died if we did nothing. That was unacceptable. So we took risks. The lives of 500 unknown humans were worth risking your ship and crew? Yes, why? Hyun looked at Quinthar with those strange human eyes. Because they were people. Because they needed help. Because we were the only ones who could save them. Do I need a better reason than that? Quinthar had no answer. The Valkyrie Collective would have calculated the value of 500 lives against the value of a warship and its crew. They would have determined the optimal course of action based on resource allocation. They would have made the logical choice. The humans had made the human choice. Lieutenant Mira spoke up from her station. Captain Admiral Corvin is on long-range communication. He wants to speak with High Researcher Quinthar. Quinthar felt a spike of concern. Admiral Corvin was the supreme military commander of the Valkyrie fleet in this region. If he was calling personally, it was important. Put it through to the conference room, Hyun said. He looked at Quinthar. You can take it privately if you prefer. No, I think you should hear this as well. They went to the conference room. The other Valkyrie researchers were still there, along with Threxis. The communication screen activated, showing Admiral Corvin's face. He had 6 eyes instead of 4, a sign of his advanced age and genetic enhancements. High Researcher Quinthar, I have received your preliminary reports. I find them concerning. Admiral, I need more time to complete my analysis. No, Corvin interrupted. You have had enough time. Commander Threxis has also been sending reports. Between your data and his observations, I have enough information to make a decision. Quinthar felt his confidence crumbling. What decision, Admiral? The Valkyrie Collective is declaring human space a zone of non-engagement. We will not enter their territory without explicit permission. We will not conduct military operations against them. We will honor our agreement to provide safe passage and resource coordinates. Additionally, we will offer 3 more star. The Valkyrie research team prepared to leave the Indomitable after 7 days aboard the human warship. They packed their instruments and gathered their data storage devices. Quinthar moved slowly, like someone who had aged 100 years in a single week. His 4 eyes were dim, his movements uncertain. Neelix approached him quietly. High Researcher, are you well? I do not know, Quinthar replied honestly. I have dedicated my entire life to the principle that everything can be understood through proper analysis. The humans have proven that principle false. I do not know what that means for me. Perhaps it means we should learn from them instead of studying them. Quinthar looked at his young assistant. What is the difference? Studying is what we do to objects. Learning is what we do with teachers. The humans are not objects, they are people. Perhaps that is the first lesson. Before Quinthar could respond, Captain Hyun entered the room. The shuttle is ready to take you back to your ships, but before you go, I wanted to show you something. He gestured for the Valkyrie to follow him. They walked to the ship's central command center, a room the Valkyrie had not been allowed to enter before. When the doors opened, they saw walls covered in displays showing the entire human fleet. Hundreds of ships appeared on the screens. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, frigates, stealth vessels, supply ships. They were scattered across dozens of star systems, each one different in design and capability. You analyzed one ship, Hyun said quietly. The Indomitable. One crew. One moment in time. One set of tactical decisions in one battle. He pressed a control, and the map expanded. More ships appeared, then more. The scale kept growing until the Valkyrie could see the full extent of human military capability. It was enormous. We have 347 warships currently in service. Each one has a different captain with a different style. Each crew has been trained differently. Each ship has modifications based on its captain's preferences and its crew's needs. Quinthar stared at the display. You do not standardize your fleet? We standardize the basics. Hull design, weapon types, power systems. But we do not standardize how they are used. Every captain has freedom to modify tactics. Every crew develops their own methods. What you saw in the Indomitable was just one version of how humans fight. There are 346 other versions out there, and they are all different. Threxus stepped forward, his eyes scanning the display. You are saying that, even if we fully understood how the Indomitable fights, it would not help us predict how any other human ship fights. Exactly. And even if you analyzed all 347 ships, the moment you finished, everything would have changed. Crews rotate, captains learn new tactics, engineers develop new modifications. We are constantly evolving, constantly adapting. By the time you understand what we were, we have become something else. The map expanded again. This time it showed human industrial capacity, shipyards, manufacturing facilities, training academies, research stations. The infrastructure was massive and growing. We are not like the Velkari Collective, Hyun continued. You have perfected your technology and tactics over millions of years. You know exactly what works and you stick to it. We have been in space for less than 200 years. We are still figuring things out. We make mistakes. We try new ideas. Sometimes we fail spectacularly, but we learn from every failure and try something different. He turned to face the Velkari directly. You wanted to analyze us to prepare for war. But the thing about humans is this: we are very, very good at adapting to anyone who tries to predict us. The moment you think you understand how we fight, we change. That is not a calculated strategy. It is just who we are. Lieutenant Mira entered the command center. Captain, we have another transmission from Admiral Corvin. Put it through. The Admiral's face appeared on one of the screens. He looked directly at Quinthar. High Researcher, I have reviewed your full report and Commander Threxus's military assessment. I am officially recalling your research team. The analysis of humanity is concluded. But Admiral, I have not completed. You have completed enough. The Velkari Collective has made its decision. Human space is off limits. We will not engage them militarily. We will not conduct further analysis. We will treat them as we would. Treat a natural hazard. Something to be avoided rather than confronted. Quinthar felt the weight of failure settle on him. I failed to understand them. No, High Researcher. You succeeded in understanding the most important thing about them. That they cannot be understood. That knowledge may have saved countless Velkari lives. Consider your mission a success even if it does not feel like one. The transmission ended. Quinthar stood in silence, processing everything. A success that felt like failure. An analysis that concluded with the impossibility of analysis. It was the most frustrating result of his career. Dr. Nari appeared at the doorway. The shuttle is ready. I wanted to say goodbye. The Velkari researchers filed out of the command center. Quinthar was the last to leave. He stopped at the door and turned back to Captain Hyun. I have one final question. Ask. Did you plan all of this? Did you intentionally demonstrate your unpredictability to frighten us away from conflict? Hyun smiled. It was a genuine smile, not threatening but not entirely friendly either. What do you think? I think you did. I think every decision you made while we were aboard was calculated to show us something that could not be calculated. I think you turned your entire ship into a demonstration of chaos theory. I think you are much smarter than you pretend to be. Or maybe we just do what comes naturally and you are reading patterns into randomness. You will never know for sure. That is the point. Quinthar felt a chill run through him. Hyun was right. Even now, even after a week of observation, he still could not tell if the humans were following a sophisticated strategy or just improvising brilliantly. It was maddening. Goodbye, Captain Hyun. I hope we do not meet again under less pleasant circumstances. Goodbye, High Researcher. I hope the same. The Velkari walked to the shuttle bay. Sergeant Doyen and his Marines escorted them, a gesture of respect rather than security. When they reached the shuttle, Neelix turned to Doyen. "Your boarding action during the battle. You took terrible risks. How did you know it would work?" Doyen shrugged. "I did not know. But the captain needed us to succeed, so we succeeded. That is what Marines do. But the probability of success was less than 20%. Then we had a 20% chance. That is better than zero." Doyen grinned. "Besides, probabilities are just guesses. Reality is what you make it." The Velkari boarded their shuttle and returned to their ships. Within an hour, the 6 Velkari vessels departed, heading back to their own space. Quinthar sat alone in his quarters, surrounded by data that explained nothing. Back on the Indomitable, life returned to normal quickly. The crew went back to their regular duties. It was as if the Velkari visit had been a minor interruption, rather than a potentially historic first contact. Taeyang found Captain Hyun in his office, reviewing reports. "Captain, did we really just avoid a war by confusing them to death?" "Maybe. Or maybe they were never going to attack us anyway and we just gave them a good excuse to stay away. Which is it? Does it matter? The result is the same. The Velkari will leave us alone. We get safe passage through their space and 3 extra star systems. I call that a win." Mira appeared at the door. "Captain, I have to ask, did you plan all of that? The boarding action during the battle? The way we responded to their tests, showing them the fleet deployment? Was it all calculated?" Hyun leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Lieutenant, you have served with me for 6 years. Have I ever done anything by accident?" "No, sir." "Then why would I start now?" He did not answer the question directly, and Mira knew better than to push. She saluted and left. Taeyang followed her out, shaking his head. Alone in his office, Hyun pulled up a classified file. It was titled First Contact Protocol, Species Classification Velkari. He had written it 3 months ago, when intelligence first suggested that the Velkari might be interested in humanity. The file contained a complete psychological profile of the Velkari collective. It detailed their reliance on analysis, their need for predictability, their fear of chaos. It outlined exactly how to deal with them, demonstrate capability without revealing full capacity, show strength without threatening, and above all, prove that humanity could not be understood through their methods. Every decision Hyun had made during the Velkari visit had been planned. The mock battle with its unusual tactics, the combat drill with its improvisation. Even allowing them to witness the raider battle had been arranged, the distress call redirected, to ensure the Indomitable would be the first to respond. It had all been theater, a performance designed to send a message, and the Velkari had received that message loud and clear. But Hyun would never admit that. Let them wonder. Let them analyze. Let them tie themselves in knots trying to figure out if humanity was brilliant or lucky, strategic or chaotic. The uncertainty itself was a weapon. He deleted the file. No evidence remained. Even his own crew did not know the full extent of his planning. They just thought they were being themselves, acting naturally. And in a way, they were. The best lies were built on truth.